So today I want to start talking about what we call the essential self. Today there's this conversation about self-discovery. Who am I? What self? And in the quest for self-discovery, the challenge becomes to locate and to identify what we call the experiencer and the feeler. The experiencer and the feeler, as opposed to just the experience or the feeling. So what we're looking for is not the experience or the feeling. We are looking for the person who's experiencing, the person who's feeling. And what is that which experiences and feels? So this is a question that's been asked by social psychologists, that's been asked by researchers. And in our quest and in our conversation, it seems to be pretty obvious to us. Who is the experiencer and the feeler? It's the soul. So the moment you bring you almost uplift a conversation that has become a philosophical conversation, a theological conversation, just by saying the word soul. Who's experiencing? Who's feeling? It's the soul. We know our body is nothing without our soul. And it's while the soul is in this world, it's using the body as the vehicle through which it experiences and navigates this world. Now, our soul is unchanging. And our soul is the unchanging aspects of self that registers all of the changes that we go through, the continuous element that observes that which is discontinuous, the uninfluenced essence that informs that which is influenced. And as the body's cells are constantly being modified, well, we know this today through research, so are our emotions, so are our thoughts, so are our actions. But the I, and I hope it's not a capital I, but the I that resides within what we're going to call the essential self remains the same. So, to summarize what I was saying is the I within is eternal. The I representing or represented by the soul. Everything else in our lives, everything else in the universe is going to come and go. But our I, uncorrupted, the uncorrupted awareness of being alive, when not overly identified with anything like the body or anything else for that matter, like the mind or the heart, is always the same. If we define our I by our soul, then it's never going to be shifting. It's never going to be modified. We don't have to worry about the ebbs and flows. It's kind of like, I think there are different types of people. There are people who live, if I can use the ocean as a metaphor, there are people who live on the surface of the ocean. There's constant waves. There's constant drama. There's so much going on. But we all know that there's still waters beneath that. And so if the I exists in the still waters beneath the ocean, it's still the same water. It's just where in the ocean on that trajectory, where on that trajectory are you finding yourself? Where do you fit? Are you hanging out on the deep waters and the still waters, or are you hanging out on the surface where there's waves and there's constant movement and you can't do anything about it. The soul is who and what we are. It's not part of us that is temporal or spatial, and it's not entirely subjective or dependent upon external stimuli. It's the deeper I. It's the still water beneath. It's that deeper I that is independent of any environmental influence or physical identity. It's the internal I, the I that was there when you were young, that said, I am young, that I am now 5 3/4. That's the I. I hope, and I hope one day that you can say to somebody, I'm 69 3/4. Why not? To be just as excited as for who you are today as you were when you were 5 and you were so excited to say that you were 5 3/4. That's the I. That's the real I. It's that I that was there when you were young and you grew a bit older. Sorry, let me just turn this off. And you grew a bit older and you said, I am middle-aged. And that's the I that is there when you say, I'm old. It's the perennial I. We're going to call it, in our conversation, the soul. The soul is the deeper inner self, which incorporates all levels of beingness, including the small surface I of selfhood. It's the ultimate reality of the true I of existence. So, for as long as we know, we as human beings, in our search for self, we have come to describe that unchangeable divine property in various terms, ranging from the soul. We've called it the psyche, we've called it light, the naf, the anima, and in more modern terms, we've used the source, or we've used the force, our center, our ground of being. People say today, our life energy. But for the most part, they all describe, or they all wish to describe, the same underlying pulsating reality, the soul. We're going to call it the soul. First, I don't think that soul has the same negative connotation in our society as, let's say, the word God does. So I'm not worried, maybe you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not worried about the PTSD that is attached to soul like the PTSD that's attached to God. So we're going to call it soul. You can call it a higher power, you can call it a life force, you can call it energy, you can call it matter, it's up to you. But it's that unique spiritual manifestation with a distinct individual personality. And it's through the lens of our individual soul energy that we can come to experience life. Life can only be experienced through our unique lens. And that's why we could all be in the same room, but we're going to see and experience different things. There are people who will come to court as witnesses of an event. And they will say, I saw it. 2 people will swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. And they're going to say, I saw that. And guess what? 2 completely different stories. That's how individualized our souls are. And according to Kabbalah, no soul came into this world before us. No soul will come into this world after us. And no soul is living here in this world at the same time as us with the same unique purpose. And we're not here just because. This wasn't just a because. There was a young woman who was having a lot of trouble, and she came to me, and she said, my whole life, my mother told me I was a mistake. And she said, I can't get rid of it. No matter what I do, I have this underlying core belief that I was a mistake, because that's all I heard my whole life. And I said to her, your mother may have told you that you were a mistake, but God doesn't make mistakes. That your soul, maybe to your mother in her unique soul experience, or the way that she defines that soul experience, she calls you a mistake, but God wanted you to be here. There was a particular design, and there was a reason why your soul had to come into this world at this time, at this place, for this particular purpose, to this mother who thinks that you're a mistake. There's a reason for that, for whatever that is. So you can spend your life defined by your mother's narrative, or you can spend your life creating your own narrative and figure out, why did my soul come into this world? Why did God bring my soul into this world? And what is the unique purpose that I have now that I'm here? What do I have to do? Questions before I continue? Cheryl, please.
About 15 years ago, a friend of mine took me to a class with a Rabbi, and it was only women. And she said, this is going to be a great class. And she sat us down, and we all had pens and paper. And she said, we're now going to describe your yud. I didn't know what a yud was. I don't have any experience with that. And so my paper was blank, and people are writing. And she said, let me help you. What makes you different than the person next to you? What kind of things do you like, or do you do, or you enjoy? She didn't quite phrase it the way you did. So I was really, really confused, because I'm thinking, okay, I'm a singer, I'm a bubby, I have lots of friends. That doesn't make me different than the person next to me who's also a singer and a bubby and a whatever. So I was trying to figure out what she was getting to. But to your point, is that the same thing? The yud, the part that makes us just a little bit different than somebody else, making our purpose on this earth a little bit different.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay.
That's
so now 15 years later, I got that class.
That's the yud.
I didn't get anything on the paper, but
it's funny because we're going to talk about this in our class on the Hebrew letters when we talk about yud, because the yud is that quintessential spark. It's that quintessential being. You see, the funny thing is that's not really what the yud is, because the yud is that spark within us that's all the same. It's the breadth and the depth. It's the hey. It's the, I mean, if you want to use Hebrew letters, it's the other parts of our being that makes us different and unique, because we do have this essence soul that is a piece of God. And if it's a piece of God, then that particular essence soul is the same. But in your analogy and in your description of something that happened 15 years ago, I think what that person was trying to get to is exactly this, is what makes us unique, because there's a reason why you're here. You are not redundant.
That was the purpose journey.
That was
the finding our purpose journey to
That's
find
right.
out why we were different. I'm
That's
sure, looking back on it now.
And I'm happy that we could give you a full circle 15 years later. You see, You know what the best thing about that story is? You're still the same person, not the same person, but you're still the person who experienced that and is experiencing this. So you have the trajectory of being able to experience what happened 15 years ago and what's happening today. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And that's not to be belittled, or, and maybe at that time you weren't ready for it, and today you're ready for it. So the person who you were then kind of registered that, questioned it, and it took 15 years for you to be able to come and process that, and that's okay, because you're still you.
But I still have all my notes, and I still question. I never went back to any classes because I felt so intimidated because I didn't understand why I was there. Right. So thank you for bringing it full circle.
And that's an important thing, because we often get intimidated by new experiences, and we don't do them because we're afraid or because of fear. So whatever, even if you don't, let's say you're listening to this now and you're like, whoa, this is like way over my head, I don't even understand it. But your soul and your subconscious is registering that. And it could be like you, Cheryl, 15 years from now, you're gonna be like, oh, I got it. Because obviously other people in the room got it, right? 15 years ago. So I think that's a really important thing, that we often fear experiences based on what we know, or based on what we don't know, or based on, we want things to be a particular way, or that's not the way it was, or that's new, I'm afraid of something new. But really, part of progressing and part of becoming the person that we are and the person we're going to be is constantly growing. The Rebbe would always say every living thing must grow, and something that's not growing is going the other way. So
and yet you asked us last week, I remember the homework question. The homework question was about the 8-year-old self, and how are we the same today as our 8-year-old self, or what was the same? I remember that.
I'm happy that you remember the question. I was wondering if somebody was going to bring it up. Exactly. And think about what is the same and what is different. Right? Like I said in the beginning of the class today, I want someone to come to me and say, guess what? Today I'm 69 3/4. That's the
I am 69 3/4 for sure, for real. My birthday's in August. So really? I am that age. And yet I do remember my 8-year-old self. And my 8-year-old self personality was the same. My parents would take me to an airport, we'd go someplace, and I would meet everybody that was sitting next to us. I would go up to them, I would start talking to them, and then going, oh my God, you're such a little busybody, and why do you, and it's part of my personality. I'm friendly, I'm gregarious. That never went away. They were always afraid I was going to get kidnapped because I was too friendly. So that's my 8-year-old self experience. I know I've changed and grown since then. I know sometimes a little more when to be quiet and not say certain things, but that's still my basic personality. That has not changed.
So there you go. Going back to your story, Cheryl, of 15 years ago, that's the Yud. The Yud is that which doesn't change. There's going to be a part of your soul, like you said, it's part of your personality. Now, there's other people in this room that it's not part of their personality. They're not the kind of person that's going to go and speak to every single person because they like, I mean, I know some people in this room and they love that I can definitely relate to that. I like that. Give me a story about someone, give me an experience, let's do it. But some people don't relate to that. It's not their story, it's not their narrative. But that's your Yud, that's your quintessential self. And it's also the same, but it's also never changing, but it's also unique to you, because there's other people who it's not unique to. And even though I can relate to that, it's probably different for me than it is for you. Now, I want to go into the next step of this. Let's talk about the path towards what Freud would call self-actualization, or the path towards fulfillment. That path is found in the discovery that to unearth or to live in accordance with that infinite spark of divine that is made distinctly present in our own finite lives. This is something that I think is so powerful and so unique to our teachings, because I haven't seen that in other teachings. And that is that we as finite creatures have the ability to transcend the finite and connect to the infinite. Now, why does that matter? That matters because so often we have limiting beliefs. We have these beliefs that we've had maybe our entire lives that say to us, oh, there's no way, you can't do it, it's not possible. These are limiting beliefs. And these limiting beliefs, we could convince ourselves that it's really part of who we are. It's really part of our nature. So by saying the soul is connected to the infinite, we're saying something very powerful. We're saying, you think that you can't do it. Maybe you're right if you were only a body, but you also have a soul. And that soul is connected to the infinite. And the fact that it's connected to the infinite, you can tap into the infinite if you want, just by tapping into your soul energy. The fullness of the I of the world, the infinite, is revealed beautifully in the individual finite I-ness of self. We have the ability to tap into something that's higher than us, that's more powerful than us, that's beyond our limiting beliefs. And through that, our I, our self, our essential self can change. So essentially, our soul is not something that we possess, it's who we are. It doesn't belong to us, it is us. Our soul is us. The soul is the higher self. It's the self of our limitless potential. The part of us that stands above the ego, the part of us that stands above selfishness, above aggression, above resentment, above all these things in our lives that bring us down. There's part of us that stands above that. And that is really who we are. It's not something we have. It's not another part of us. It's really essentially who we are. Our soul is the backdrop of our being. It's the light that illuminates, that clarifies our thoughts, that clarifies our emotions, that clarifies our actions. And effectively, I would say that clarifies our whole life. So often when we're like confused and not sure and maybe off-centered or off-balanced, all we have to do is find the center. Finding the center is just finding that soul, finding that quintessential self that's beyond me. It's not about I. And that's why when someone's depressed, the best spiritual antidote to depression is to go volunteer, go do something for someone else. Because as long as you're stuck in the self, in the selfish self, you're never going to be able to step out of that. But the moment you step out of the selfish self and you step into the selfless self, you do that by doing something for someone else selflessly, then you tapped into your soul. Then you tapped into the infinite and you can't be depressed. There's no space because that part of God is truly you. There's no space for depression and for sadness in that infinite soul experience. So if someone is sad or down, and I'm not talking about extremes, I'm talking about an average situation. There are people who need to get medicated. There are people who the depression is debilitating, and that's a different story. I'm talking about the average person. Like now, especially through COVID, some of us have had up days and down days. If we're feeling down, all we have to do is tap into our essence soul, the essential self. The easiest way to tap into the essential self is by doing something for someone, by stepping out of the selfish self. Good questions? Okay. I'm going to continue if no one has anything to say. I didn't want this to be a monologue, but I'm happy to continue talking. So the soul, oh, Paris, you have something to say?
Yeah, hi. I'd just like to say I've been following you on the podcasts that I listen to on my audio systems, and you mentioned a lot about selflessness and selfishness and stuff like that. So I had a bit of bad experience probably more than 6 months ago with a bad relationship breakup, and I'm quite a selfless person. They call me a fixer-upper, and that's what I do a lot. And I think that's sort of part of my journey to help people and help heal them and those types of things. But when that stops and those people no longer need you, then you sort of, go into that other mode where you sort of shut down and those types of things. So I just want to know what your thoughts are on that and why that happens.
There are, I think, close to 7 billion people in the world. If someone doesn't need you anymore, it means that they created space because someone else needs you.
That's good. I'm still trying to discover. I mean, I've been very spiritual most of my life, but since I started listening to you and the way you describe the way the Kabbalah and that works, it's been amazing, and it's started transforming my life. So that's why I wanted to join and purchased all your books as well recently.
Well, thank you. Really happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending some time with us. And I know it's very late for you, right?
Yeah, it's about 11:30 right now in the evening. So it's the only one I can tend to. And I know you mentioned, I was going to ask you at the end, but the Hebrew letters sessions, I'd be really interested in that because I actually want to understand the power of the letters and how to actually start learning to speak Hebrew as well.
We can definitely send you the recordings of those. So no worries about that.
All right. Thank you very much. I just don't have the video on because we've got very bad internet in Australia. So it's not that great. So sometimes it will just pause.
No worries, Mike. Okay.
Nice accent. Thank you.
So
can I just
please
go a little bit on what Paris just said, because I think it's a really relevant comment. When you've been in a certain role, it's especially a parent role, but it can be any kind of helper role that changes. And then you're like, wait, that's been my identity. And so how do we shift that? And I don't think that's something that, and I'll put a society in there, that we really are taught to do. It's like, how does, and certainly, as a caregiver or a parent, your role shifts there. So if you're that giving person and then things change, kind of like you're left out in the field. And I'm really happy to hear you again say, it's like, okay, well, we have to shift. And then there's other people that need help. And I think we get very narrow-minded. I certainly have experienced that. So
I think it's really easy to get stuck in what's familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. We can identify and say it's familiar. That's what I do. But life is about changing and about evolving and about becoming better. And I think if there's a way that I can encourage you to just close your eyes and say, that person doesn't need me. And there's a reason why, because God has made space in my life because someone else needs me. Who needs me? I got to find the person who needs me.
And when we get too attached to that previous role, man, that's just miserable. So,
and in Russian, there's a term called a sam sapozhnik. It really means a simple shoemaker, but it's a euphemism that the Russians use for people who don't want change.
I'm going to give another saying. There's that saying, family is everything, which actually is a saying that really bothers me because there is so much more. And especially, and I'm going to go back to a parent, there is a point where, you know, your children or other, they don't need you as much and they're not everything. So we need to look into our community.
Maybe we have to redefine family. Jill, I consider you family.
Yeah.
The family is everything.
Okay, there you go. I appreciate that. Yes. I have just heard it from maybe family members that and I'm like, it's not, there's others. So yes, okay, let's redefine family. Thank you. I have my mishpucha.
Exactly, the mishpucha. That sounds much better than the family, because family is everything, but you can always grow the family.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna reframe that in my head then. Okay, thanks.
I think it's an amazing thing to be able to use words and then just define them and redefine them, because words that's what they are. They're just tools. They're just ways of expression. So at any time, they're not literal. They're just words that we use to describe feelings, to describe experiences, to describe knowledge. They're tools. So we can choose, our essential self can choose how to use that word. So I think it's like that in any word. If you have a word that's bothering you, just redefine it.
Okay. And let everybody else know you redefined it.
Well, why should we be in the dark? We want to know about that. Maybe we want to maybe we want to take that inspiration from you and redefine it for ourselves.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheryl, please.
I was going to add to what you said, Jill, that I have several sisters of another mother, and they are my family. I mean, our chosen family, not our biological family. That was one thing I was going to add to you. But a friend of mine made a comment the other day, and she said, and it made so much sense. She said, at our age, okay, so I'm almost 70. A lot of my friends are in their 70s, and we all think about our kids and our grandkids and whatever. And she said, they are the center of our universe, but we are not the center of theirs. And that's where there's a change. They become their own center, and we need to find someone else or something else that is close to us for our center. But the same thing about the being needed or not needed. Should be happy that you raised well enough adjusted, hopefully happy children that left the nest. Otherwise, you'd have them forever. We don't want that.
And taking that example, Cheryl, and bringing it back to what Parrish was saying, it's the same thing in a breakup of a relationship. You know, we get used to being there for someone, and when that person is not there, they are the center of your universe, but you may not be the center of their universe. And that's God's way of saying to you, okay, find the person who will be. I think, you know, and I think about this often because I spend so much time talking about relationships, is that in our lives, in our world today, we have missed the most important element of relationships. People come to me looking for, and they've got a laundry list, literally a list a mile long of what they're looking. And I look at this list and I'm like, none of this really matters. There's only one thing that really matters, in my opinion, about relationship, is to find someone who thinks that you're the greatest thing that happened since sliced challah. That's it. To find someone who thinks that you are the center of their universe. Everything else is nothing compared to that. It's one thing. And I think that what COVID taught us is that loneliness is a real thing. So many people who thought they had a life, who were going out and doing the thing every night, they realized through COVID that they couldn't do that. And so loneliness set in. So that desire to have someone to be able to share and to be with, and a person who thinks that we're the greatest thing that happened since whatever it is that it's since, that's all it means. That's it. Everything else is gravy, in my opinion. And so often, and I think it's a great example because so often we end up making very simple things complicated. I don't know what year someone said, your life is too simple and it's time to complicate it. Everything that was supposed to be very simple, we now need to complicate. I don't know who said it and when it happened, but it happened some point. I think it must have been before I was born, because if I was around during that time, I would have made a big statement about it. But I guess it's never too late, and I'll make the statement now. Don't complicate simple things. And if it seems complicated to you, simplify it. If the definition is too complicated, simplify it. Because at the end of the day, going back to the yud, going back to the soul, going back to the essential self, that's really what the essential self is. Within the still waters beneath, within that essential self, everything is simple. Everything is understood. There's a reason and there's a purpose for everything. So why are we complicating something that's supposed to be so simple? And it's not about trying to find the drama or the complication. Don't try to find the waves. Try to find the still waters. If it's complicated for you today, figure out a way to make it simple. When somebody comes to me with a laundry list of things that they're looking for in a mate, you know what I say to them? I say, this is every reason why you don't want to find somebody. You are just creating a superficial blockage between you and someone you're trying to find. And it's okay. Just say, I'm not ready to find someone to get into a meaningful, long-term and healthy relationship. Say it. Now that you said it, forget about the list. When you're ready, you'll come back and you'll know. And you'll tell me the 3 things you can't live with and the 3 things you can't live without. And as we say in Yiddish, weitergefahren. We'll figure it out. But so often when we do these things, we're actually, it could be fear, it could be trauma, it could be whatever it is. Maybe you need therapy. But what that is doing is just creating a buffer zone for you to be able to have an excuse why you don't want to get into a meaningful relationship. So what I say is stop fooling, because I love this Yiddish saying. In the shtetl, in the old country, they used to say, "Anar nart zich allein." I'm going to translate it for you, but it sounds so much better in Yiddish. Anar nart zich allein. A fool only fools themselves. So what I say is take away the list, stop fooling yourself, and say the thing. Say, I'm not ready. At least that way, for yourself inside, you could say, you could be real. Authenticity, and that being real with yourself, is going to lead you to being real with yourself later. So either you're going to be very sad about the fact that you're not ready, or it's going to inspire you to change and figure out how to be ready. But the more times, and I'm just using relationships as an example, but it can be applied to anything. The more times you're creating excuses or complicating something that's really supposed to be simple, that's when you're never going to grow. And that's why people stay stagnant. They don't grow. They're not changing. They're not allowing themselves to change, because there's that stubbornness And those excuses are forcing them to stay in the same place. So by letting go and by giving up and saying, this is where I am, I'm just not ready now. That's okay. It's your life. It's your choices. It's totally okay. But don't try to make an excuse or blame it on someone else. Shifting blame, another one. So often, shifting blame. And I'll say it because I say it so often. And those of you who have been in my classes, you probably have heard this, I don't know, every other week from me. But because I really believe, I see this in so many ways. Emotional maturity. What is emotional maturity? It's being able to hold two truths, and they could be opposing truths. Being able to hold two truths at the same time. That's emotional maturity. And it's okay. You can hold those truths. There's no problem with that. But by not being real with yourself and always shifting the blame, and it's his fault, and it's her fault, and it's their fault, what ends up happening is we miss the beauty of it all. It's there. The reason why you're experiencing it, the reason why it's there for you to learn something from. The reason why that relationship breakup happened to you, Parish, is because it's there for you to learn something from. And so by shifting the blame, by not accepting it, or by just allowing things to be, very often we can't handle those emotions, so we just let it be, and we become like shells of human beings. We're not really there. We're there, but we're not really there. So by doing that, we're actually stopping ourselves from becoming the person that we should be. What's amazing is, in order for change to happen, there needs to be the space for change. So that breakup, that experience, is a great gift that you have. Instead of saying, I have a great loss in my life, you can say something like, thank you, God, for the space to change. I now have a new space. I lost my job. I now have a new space. Obviously, there's something better for me. And the truth is, if you look at it in hindsight, you'll find, and people will tell you, that eventually it's true. They do get a better position. They do get a better job. Something does happen. And probably it wouldn't have happened if they didn't have that space for that change. So you can ignore it, you can fight it, you can be stubborn, or you can embrace it.
And I think that was my problem. That was quite devastating when I might talk to you personally about it through email or something at some stage. I don't really want to divulge much about here, but it's about, you mentioned about us being the vessel, and we get too full and overflows and explodes. I wasn't clearing out all that clutter, asking why this happened, why did this happen, she was sort of the right person for me. That's how I felt. And it was that experience. And there was a lot of, I guess it's hard to explain, but energy exchange, and it feels like our souls are connected and all that. But once I started listening to some of your audio books and things like that, and your podcasts on Kabbalah for everyone, and you start talking about empty all that out, get rid of the clutter, I started opening up a bit more, and now I follow those principles with everything, and it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So yeah, I apply that technique. But I was so full of distress, and why is she leaving me? Is she going to come back? And those types of things. And I had no space. So yeah, it made perfect sense.
What Susie said before is exactly that. Is that we really don't, or I think it was Jill that said it. I don't remember. Somebody said it, but that nobody taught us this. We know the world. We never learned this. Somehow we learned that drama is like, it's exciting, and we kind of push for that instability, or we learn to just like run away and not to deal with it. And the greatest thing is that it's you. the 8 3/4 Cheryl and the 69 3/4 Cheryl. By the way, I didn't know, it was just a random number I threw out, but it's hilarious. But that's the same person. You're not going to be able to hide from the you. You can't hide.
Nothing's random. Nothing's random.
Okay. You're throwing my own words back at me. Thank you. But you can't hide from the you. You're still going to carry yourself no matter where you are, no matter who you are. So you might as well just say the thing, be real. And as a result, that can be the impetus for the change. And that can be the impetus for the growth. And that could be the impetus for the healing. It's amazing that our class is coming to an end. I'd love to hear what you're taking home this week with you. Why don't we start with Jill? Can we start with you? And then you'll pass it on. I'd love to hear your nuggets.
Okay. Well, I think my nugget has to be that I'm redefining words, because that statement I made about like family is everything has been bothering me for such a long time. And you just shifted it for me. And I've heard Cheryl, there's like, family of choice. I understand that as well, but it's something that, and how we are letting somebody else's definition either of us define us, and that's kind of where that came from. It's somebody else in my family that is it's like family is everything, blood is thicker than water, and all like all of that, all of that. So I'm very that's my big nugget from today. You totally reframed it for me, and I am gonna be shouting it from the rooftops now. So thank you. That was great. I'll pass it to Cheryl.
Thank you, Jill. I'm happy you were able to help me find the yud part different than the rest of me. I love the redefinition of if something gets too complicated, just simplify it, walk away. Seems like my life is always full of drama, and I'm usually in the center of it. And that's probably by choice. But I really do want to just walk away. So I'm going to think about that a whole lot more. And I thank you for that. And Celeste, are you awake? Are you with us? I love your picture.
Thank you. I am awake and with you.
Great.
A couple of things. The image of the ocean where there's the waves on top, and no matter what kind of weather is happening affecting the surface, there's always a stillness that's accessible to us. And through the I don't mean to be advertising your class tonight, Rabbi, but I'm going to accidentally do that. So through, the goal is to be able to live life in the space of that stillness, meaning never losing that thread, even in action of daily life. So that image of the ocean was a great reminder to me. And Parrish, thank you for sharing your experiences. I think, I relate to it. It's just in a different set of circumstances, yet I relate to it very much. And it was a good reminder that sometimes in the moments of hardship and pain, there are gifts to be found, and we might not know what those gifts are in the moment. So thank you for sharing that and reminding me of that. Janine, it's nice to see you again. Are you ready to share? Hi.
Sure, thank you. So Rabbi, you covered a lot of good stuff today, but the main thing that's resonating with me is how much I've missed being here. So I'll be back. Thank you. How about parish?
So well, this is my first time, and it was great to hear everybody's thoughts, and especially from the rabbi. But the Yud part was really good for me. It was interesting, and also the definition of lowercase I, because I noticed that a lot in some of the lessons about capitalization, which is quite true. And sometimes I try not to use that when I'm speaking to people. I use the word am, which means it's the same thing really, but I try and do that as much as I can, possibly, especially in email communications, because what you see is when you're typing a letter to someone, it starts with an I need to do this, I need to do that, I'm going around here. But the real purpose of I is who you are as a person, as the rabbi said. And that was great to understand the whole thing, even when you were younger. And I didn't even think of it on that sort of level. I have lots of characteristics from I'm young, but I've never thought about it. But now I'm going to reflect on it and try and write a whole list of all these things that were common when I was a child. So that were the main things that I took out of today. So thank you for that. Who else we got here? Sorry. Susie.
Hi.
Hi.
It's good to be back. I haven't been here for quite a few months. So what I got out of it, I'm not sure if you said this, Rabbi Bernath, or maybe it was somebody else who said it, about our souls. And what I got out of what somebody said was the souls that we have now are very much the souls that we had when we were little. And it's, if you have children or grandchildren, it's good to be aware, just to identify or take note of what the child's soul is now, because that will definitely carry over into their adulthood, and that is their true essence. And, there are so many environmental influences, whether they're good or bad, but make sure that you remain aware of what the child's soul is and what your true soul is externally, eliminating all the environmental influences, which are very powerful. Yeah. So thanks for that. I needed to be reminded of that. Okay, so I'll assign the next person. How about Alana? Hi, Alana.
Hi, neighbor.
Hi.
Yeah, today was very, very meaningful. I kind of really appreciate also the talking about the soul as our higher self, and just, you have to keep learning and growing and trying to be your best. And just to share, I really related to your little story, Rabbi, about the person who was told that, they were never wanted. Because in a way, I'm going to share something personal, but I'm a child of Holocaust survivors, and my mother, did not want to have a child. And yet here I am. So I kind of grew up with that, always in the background of knowing that really she wasn't prepared to have a child in this world. So I really appreciate that little spark about, but maybe God wanted me to be here. And now she really does appreciate me because I am her caregiver, but that's another story. But if I weren't here and I'm an only child, what the hell would she do? So there's a reason for everything.
Wow, that's actually an amazing realization. And obviously she probably doesn't realize it, but it's a realization for you to have, that she who didn't want, now there's a newfound purpose. Because it's funny, people talk about the fifth commandment of honoring your parents, and they think, they teach it to kids. Oh, you have to honor your parents and don't speak bad and don't scream at them. That's how we talk about the fifth commandment. But the fifth commandment, most of it has to do with our parents in their old age and taking care of them. That's what the real fifth commandment is. And so And so, there, and I had someone who came to me and said that, their parents abused them as a child. And now the parents in their old age and they need their help. What do? And I said, and that is why it's the fifth commandment. And it's not a nice thing to do, but it's a commandment from God. And it's the only commandment that it says, if you do this, you'll live a long life. That you're right. It says it in the Torah. It's the only thing it says. It's actually the only mitzvah in the Torah of which it says the reward for it. Because it's that hard.
Could you expound on that a little?
And
What was the reward that you'll have a
it says,
good life?
"Kabed et avicha v'timecha v'man yarich," that you're going to, if you honor your father and mother, your days will be lengthened in this world. You
Ah,
will live a long life. It's the
Thank you.
only time we ever hear of a reward for a mitzvah. Because there are situations such as this person who the parent has no right to want, desire, and the person, for all practical purposes, should not do anything for the parents. And that would be totally understood. But by doing that, by going beyond themselves and everything that is within this world and connecting with that essential self, and doing that even though every part of their being says, this is not the right thing to do. The Torah actually says, and this is your reward. This has been an amazing morning. I don't want to take up time. I like to start on time and end on time to honor your time, but this has been an absolutely amazing morning, and thank you for sharing it. And I am looking forward to those of you who are joining me tonight. I will see you later for some meditation. And those of you who aren't joining me, you're welcome. Just let me know. I'll send you the link so you can join us for some meditation later at 7:30. And if not, I will see you next week. Have a wonderful,
Thank
wonderful
you.
day.
Thank
Have a
you.
wonderful
Thank you.
day.
Have a good
See
day,
you all next
everybody.
week. Bye.
Good to see you,
Everybody.
Janine.
Have a great day.
Same. Bye.